Hello, today we're going to talk about Anselm's ontological argument. Anselm was born in 1033 and he became Archbishop of Canterbury in 1093. He never doubted the existence of God and was a strong believer, and so he created an argument which he believed proved his existence. It was an a priori argument, which means that it's based entirely on logic and contains no sense experience. His argument was based on 3 points. The first was his definition of God, which God is the being that was nothing greater can be conceived. His second argument is that if something in reality exists, it is greater than in imagination. And so by these 2 steps, he thinks that he logically can prove the existence of God. Because he said that if one can imagine God, then God must exist in reality, as God is the greatest possible thing conceived, and reality is greater than imagination. This obviously was open to criticism, and the first person to criticize this was a monk called Gaunilo. Gaunilo said that we cannot possibly prove the existence of God without some sort of sense experience and feeling God. He said that logically proving God could not work. He then went on to put his point of the perfect island. Gaunilo said that if one of his friends came up to him and said, "Imagine a perfect island," he could easily do so. However, if his friend then went on to say and said, "Oh yes, imagine if this island was real, how much better would that be?" then the island must be real, as it's a perfect island, and if you can imagine it, then in reality, as it's perfect, it must be greater. And so Anselm's thinking proves that a non-existent island exists, and so it's fundamentally flawed. However, Anselm comes back against Gaunilo's criticism. He says that you cannot compare an island with God, as an island has a beginning and an end, which hence is a contingent existence, whereas God is eternal and is a necessary being, and so it has an internal existence. So Anselm continued his argument with his second point, which was the point of necessary existence. There's another priori argument developed from his previous definition of God, and there's nothing greater can be conceived. So Anselm asks, which definition is greater? A God who can be thought of as not existing, or a God who cannot be thought of as not existing? Clearly the second, because a God who cannot be thought of not existing would be a greater God. And so by this statement he said that he has proved God again. Anselm did have some supporters. French philosopher Descartes, born in 1596, was a keen supporter of Anselm. However, he was not sure that he had actually read Anselm's book. He had a similar argument to Anselm's second point of necessary existence. He defined God even as a perfect being, and he said that as a perfect being, he had all the rights. He had experienced all the characteristics of a perfect being. This included beauty, truth, and, most of all, existence. So he said that it must exist. He went on to put the point of a triangle. He said, we know that a triangle has 3 sides and 3 sharp edges. And so, in the same way, if you think of a mountain, it has a valley. A mountain must have a valley. And so he said, if we think of God, it must have existence. These were the arguments of the ontological argument. If you choose my next video, we'll explain the criticisms of the ontological argument.